waterways in the thing. And then again, this is Moosehead Lake, and you can see at the bottom, Greenville is the two major. It has 80 islands. It is Greenville and Rockwood, 20 miles to the north. 80 islands, Sugar being the best. You can see Sugar Island. I actually can get a pointer here. You can see, oops, there we go, Greenville here. And then up here, Rockwood. And then you have Kenio, which we'll talk about. Sugar Island being the biggest, and then Deer Island the second. And I believe that Farm Island is the third. So there's the beginning. You can see Brassway Lake right here. And those are some of the major, we'll talk about a lot about those a little bit later. And the Moosehead Lake region, of course. And in the picture, right up here, that's the inlet. It's up by Rockwood. It's called Moose River. It's from Brassway Lake. And this is an old photo looking from Moose River toward Kenio right here that you can see. So if you've never been to Kenio, it's not really an island. But it looks like an island, but it isn't really an island. But there's a little strip of land there that this is an old photo of at Rockwood, getting off at the Rockwood. And we'll go into that quite a bit more at the same time. And this is the birches here. The area which included Rockwood was called Birch Point. Birch Point was a popular site for Indian camps, and because of the many birch trees. You go there now, it's still got birch trees. And the name Rockwood is believed to come from Hyman Rockwood Page, who decided in the early part of the century that they needed a post office, and so he named the post office after himself for Rockwood. And there's another photo, just a little bit bigger, of looking from Moose River. And right about where this is right here is a camp called Maynard's Hunting Camp, which is pretty historic down there. And you could see that is going into the Moose River. This is used to be, I don't fish there as much anymore, but spring fishing, this at Moose River is the first ice out. So we all used to go up there. There'd be about 30 boats just going back and forth at the first ice out up there. But it was good fishing. And then again, Greenville, you can see that Greenville was actually, I found this kind of interesting, to Thornton Academy. So it was a grant to Thornton Academy in Saco. And there was a few things, and they had a sawmill, of course, and that's the early part of Greenville. And there's Rockwood. From Rockwood looking at Kenio Mountain, there's a lot to go over. We'll go over some things in Kenio Mountain. How many people have climbed Kenio? Anybody here climbed Kenio? Oh, a lot of people have. It's beautiful. Right now, up on top of Kenio, right now, they have a steel lookout tower. So it used to be a fire warden thing, but now they converted it into a steel tower. So it's really worth the going up into and stuff. And there's a trail that goes around here, starts probably about right here, and goes well over here, and goes around and then up the back side of the mountain. So it's pretty neat. And one of the things about the Moosehead Lake region that I found interesting was they had this guy, Everett Parker, wrote all these little books about the Moosehead Lake region area. And they're online. You can get them online. And this is about Chief Henry Red Eagle, one of the Moosehead Lake area Native Americans that lived up there before he passed away, just at the turn of the century. And then there's this here, another one that I bought, and others that I bought, the Moosehead Lake Indians. It goes into a lot of the history of the Moosehead Lake Indians and all that type of stuff. One of the things when you get into the Indian culture, because it was by word of mouth, it's vague, to say the least. Native Americans when they first came in around, when they first were introduced to white settlers and white explorers that were coming in and trappers, there was probably, my estimate, after reading everything I've read, was probably between 30 and 40,000. And so 100 years later, because of smallpox, they were down to less than 5,000. So the attrition rate from the disease alone, was like 90% of the Indian population were just wiped out just because whole villages at the whole time. We'll go into that. And I suggest that you look, if you have some time to look about this guy was just he was a really good person. And some of his quotes, he was vaudeville, he was in the movies, he was in a lot of different things. And I like some of his quotes that he had once an Indian, and now I know that the word Indian is probably, but for this presentation, I'm going to use Native Americans 95% of the time. And then sometime, if I have a quote like this is exactly what we said. And sometimes, I like the third one, sometime I think it is better not to yell too loud. We could probably, not this group, because you haven't yelled yet at me, but if you do later, then you know what I mean, I'll bring the slide back up again. And it's just his sayings in his life was an inspiration to the Moosehead Lake region and to the Native American culture as a whole. So it was really good. Oops. And then that's him and his son. And there's Katie and I. If Katie was here right now, she'd throw something at me. But this is looking up on top of Kenio, and we were up on the tower. That was probably last week. No, it wasn't. Maybe not last week. Yeah, water weight, I think. Yeah. That was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And of course some hunting pictures of Moosehead Lake. And of course moose, I've always put a few slides in about moose is an Indian term again for eater of twigs, and you don't see them as much obviously anymore that you used to, and I think that is just mainly because tick and the infestation. The mortality rate for moose babies right now, calves are just like 50% or something like that because of the tick infestation. So, and they weigh 1,000 pounds, and every time I can get some moose meat, I think it's the best tasting meat I've ever tasted in my life. I would have a moose hamburger every day for about maybe 2. And cows breed at the age, and they usually give 1, and they stay with their mother. When they first, I found this interesting. When they first, they weigh 20 to 25 pounds at birth, and then by the fall they'll weigh 300 to 400 pounds. So they can put up some weight, that's for sure, pretty quickly. And then moose hunting, of course, just a little history on the moose hunting. I kind of put that, this is kind of a, I don't think it symbolizes moose hunting, but way back in 1980, I mean, moose were pretty tame. They weren't used to being hunted. So you could basically walk up to a moose in a lot of areas and just basically, but now it's not like that. But there was quite a history to the moose, and right now, this was in 1980. I looked up the updated figures, but I figured, I wouldn't put too much. I thought this was good. But, from 1830, the moose season really started. Prior to 1830, there were no laws. Then in 1875, moose hunting was allowed. In 1880, moose season reopened. And then 1915, it was closed. 1919, it opened up, 11 days for 1 bag. And then that. And 2024, at this particular time, there's about 4,100 permits. and they were, if you want to enter the lottery, there were 76,000 applicants, in-state and out-of-state applicants for, and my calculation, if you look at up here where $7, one chance, 22 for residents, and then for non-residents, just to get in the lottery, is $15 for one chance and 35. If selected, then it's $52. This was in 1980. It hasn't changed that much, actually, when you look at the prices. $52 for a resident to get a permit, and $485 out of state. So, yep. So, and then my calculations come to that. It adds to the state coffer between $2 and $3 million a year. So, you know, there's a lot of controversy about moose hunting right now because of the mortality rate because of ticks, and whether we should, you know, they're always in conversations about whether we should limit the amount. But right now, if you look at financing of that department, it's a major input for dollars for that particular, you know, wildlife. And this is kind of interesting. I kind of put the rainbow trout, there's whitefish, there's salmon, there's togue, and then there's shiners. And that's kind of the history right now of where Moosehead Lake is. And if you look at some of the things that have happened that have been negatively impacting the fisheries, yellow perch were introduced in the 1950s, white perch in smallmouth bass in the 70s, white perch, and these all have compromised the salmon and the brook trout fisheries. We used to go up there all the time and catch salmon like they were not a lot, but in the springtime. And now it's a lot more difficult because of the competition for the food. And a lot of people don't know this, but landlocked salmon are not native to Moosehead Lake. Landlocked salmon were introduced in the 1850s, and the way they did it was, at that time, there was a railroad that ran up to Rockwood. So all stocking of ponds, at least a lot of them in the state of Maine, because of the bad roads and fish couldn't live on the roads in the trucks, is that all the stocking, at least the majority of it, was done by train. So they had these big tanks in these trains, and a lot of the trains and the tracks, especially at Moosehead, when you went from Greenville to Rockwood, was right along the shoreline. And so that's how they got stocked. That's how a lot of these lakes, and especially Moosehead Lake with landlocked salmon, and so they were never really native. What was native to, and the Indians, you'll see that always in the Indian, in some of the books that I've read, is that whitefish. So way back, you know, prior to the stocking of salmon, is that whitefish were there. And then, so that was the fish that the natives really get. And this is just, I put this in there just because you always hear about the Atlantic salmon runs. So the Atlantic salmon, you know, they rarely made it to Moosehead Lake, if they ever did. So there's no really, because they were not native to the lake. But these are some of the breeding grounds of the Atlantic salmons, and this is just the Kennebec region. So the Kennebec, and I'm no expert on, let me tell you, on Atlantic salmon and the breeding, but they're trying to restore the breeding grounds for Atlantic salmon. And so we've all heard about the alewives, and we've all heard about, you know, Atlantic salmon restoration. I think on the Penobscot there's a better chance, and what I've learned is that on the Kennebec River it's tough. It's tough to get it's just, and one of the areas that's one of the toughest, and I'm no expert on it, but is the Lockwood Dam in Waterville. It's very difficult because they want to go to the right, but yet the fishway is to the left, the fish lift is to the left. They don't want to, and then they lift them up and then they put them in, and then, so it's a political thing. I think if I looked at the Edwards Dam and when it was removed and what it has done for central Maine, the Edwards Dam, I say that was probably a no-brainer. And we'll get into some of the dams and some of the issues with dams on the Kennebec River. I mean, And there's just a good picture of Mount Keneo. It's 763 feet high. And yeah, in 1840 it was sold for $350. And you know, I'm sure you guys have all read David Thoreau and how he visited Keneo and some of his teachings. And that is the Keneo Peninsula, which we'll go into in a little bit. And there's Keneo. This is kind of a, it was the vacation place for the wealthy, I would say, because they came from Boston up the railroad and they stayed. This is the Keneo House. So it was built in 1844. It was destroyed by fire in 1864, rebuilt, and then burnt again. And then, but it had all these things: bowling alley, library, and like I said, in rooms. It was for the rich and rich people. One of the stories that happened at Fort, they had a depot at Winslow, probably where that garage is and where Ken's food wagon is right now. They had a depot, narrow gauge depot right there. And so the people would come up and they would get off for a while in the town of Winslow. They would cross over the bridge, they would go to Fort Halifax, and they would carve pieces out of Fort Halifax. So we have these holes in Fort Halifax that are about this big and about that deep, where my theory is people came and were just taking souvenirs. It's written that all these guys, all these people did at certain times. And then some people said that they were musket shots that went in and they were retrieving the bullet, you know, but I don't know. I don't. It was not, you know, we'll get into Fort Halifax a little bit later, but, and then, you know, there's, this was at Keneo, and that's, I think that's a mother-in-law, I'm not sure. I think that's, no comment. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-oh. That's my wife. And then the Katahdin, of course, right here is the Katahdin. That was a ship that was on Moosehead Lake. It's still there. We wrote it probably 5 years ago or something like that. We took a trip on it, and just for the sake of it. And we went up there with our boat a little while ago, and they were having a wedding on it. And this is, I think they're having a wedding on this one right now. Yeah. I yelled out, "Don't do it," but it didn't help. Jump, jump. Oh well, I didn't say that. And so, yeah.
What was the flag in front there?
Let me see. I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. Yeah.
There's one in the back, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the stars. But there's a lot of stars on that one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Ray,
Mm.
what does it mean, carries 500 passengers and draws 7 feet?
Oh,
Draws 7 feet.
that's just from the water line down below. So, so you could go in a 10 foot. 10 foot you wouldn't hit, but anything less than 10 foot you'd hit. You'd hit the bottom of the boat. So that's a draw of the boat. And this is Indian Pond, and I just put this in just for its Harris Station. So one of the things about Moosehead Lake is that it has like Moose River, and then it has the east and the west outlet right near each other. So within almost like 5 miles of each other, you have the inlet and you have the 2 outlets that come out. And then the only other really tributary going into is Roach River, which is on Kakajo on the other side of Moosehead Lake. So those are basically the smaller ones, but you can see that. And I put this in there just because this is a Harris Dam. It's the biggest dam, believe it or not. Everybody thinks that Wyman is the biggest dam, but Harris Dam is bigger than Wyman as far as megawatt of electricity. And so, And you can see the last log drive. We'll go into that a little bit, beginning at Moosehead and ending at Winslow, Maine. And this is water release. This is important for the rafters, because this is where all the rafting starts. So on the Kennebec River, Harris Dam is where, if you see all those people, they're going up to this Harris Dam location to go off. And that, you can see that Harris Dam, of course, is up here, and this is the major throughway. And on a good day, there's probably, God, when we went up there, there's probably sometime, I don't know now, but at least 100 rafts that are going in that river for that day to go down this river. And what they're waiting for is release. So they release it all at once, not all at once, and then they'll ride those releases all the way down. So.
Do you know what the name of the town is? Where that is?
I don't know. It's one of those T11, yeah.
So it's not like something on 201?
Oh, no, because you could see, here's the Rockwood one here. That's the Rockwood on the side of Rockwood that's going from Greenville to Rockwood. And then there's this Burnham Pond Road here that you go into, for Indian Pond only. And then here, there's another road here, but it's quite a hike, and I'm not sure where that one. It's been a while since I've been in to do rafting, so.
So the dam in the south end of Indian Pond?
Yep, right here. So, a lot of people, if I wouldn't have gone rafting the number of times that I went, I probably would never had any reason to go in that area to look at the dam unless I was doing rafting. Because it is kind of like, when you get up there, it's not when you get in there and and then that's the rafters. And then these are the rafting people. Yeah. We went rafting quite a few times, huh? Maybe. I know, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it does say something. Yeah, it does. That's Wyman Dam. One of my favorite lakes is Wyman Dam in Moscow, Maine. Wyman Dam was built in 1928, and it wasn't built for main power. It was built, well, sort of like the lumber and the textiles, but it was really for Boston area. So they built that Wyman Dam, Wyman did, for electricity. There's Holbrook Falls, which is on Wyman Dam. It's beautiful. You can get there. It's on Pleasant Ridge on the other side. You can get there and walk in. It's just a beautiful set of waterfalls. You can get there by boat on Wyman Lake too. It's beautiful. Here's some of the construction pictures. And this is funny because the only reason I put in there is local history is in 1899, Walter Wyman. If you look at Oakland history, you know that this Walter Wyman guy was famous in the village of Oakland, Maine. And then Oakland, he called it Oakland Electric Company, which became CMP. So this guy was pretty famous. He was an engineer. So, and that's why damming Messalonsky Stream, and this is damming of Wyman Lake, was built in 1930. 72 megawatts. So if you looked at Harris Dam, it had 78 megawatts. My sister and I, we had the privilege to go up a couple years ago and take a tour of all the dams on the Kennebec River, or at least most of them. And we went up to Wyman, and when I went in there, it's a throwback, with the electrical components of analogs and everything that we have nowadays, is that when we went back there, it was like the same old stuff that was like, it's amazing, but the force power of water. One of the things about the Kennebec Valley region lately is when we went there, it's like the drought conditions that we find ourselves in over the last 5 years, is that because of the regulations of releasing and how much you can't put through a generator and how much you have to go around the generator to maintain river frontage, is that, like the dam in Winslow, probably there were a period of over a month, it could not produce electricity because it didn't have enough water to go through the turbines. So, you know, two summers ago, the summer we were there, it was like 2 months out of like the 4 months is that they didn't have enough water to maintain the flow outside and still have enough force to go through the turbines to generate electricity. And that's been a problem for Brookfield over the last couple of years. And then, of course, Wyman, Walter Wyman. And logging in Maine is a logging camp and, you know, all that type of stuff. One of the things that we, put that over there, is that you'll see in this is Jessica was able to give me this pick pole and stuff. And I have one. I forgot to bring it in actually, but I cut it right here because I had used it so much. But one of the things that people don't notice is if you look at the tip of it, it's a screw type of tip. So, and that was, so when they, I'll do it on Bruce. So Bruce, could you just stand up over there?
Stand up, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce. You think yeah.
Trust you.
You beat me at pickleball. He plays pickleball. He beat me at pickleball the other day. Thinks he's so hot. You know what I mean? Yeah. You'll see. Yeah. So what they would do is they would, because they were on there, this was used for a variety of reasons. One was balance. It was good to balance like a tightrope. But they would, when you pushed it into a log, what you would do is you would turn it. So when you turned it, it would bite the log. And then not only could you push it, but you could pull it. And so, and to release it, all you had to do was go this and you could release it. So when you look at the old photos of people taking logs and, you know, you see them twisting in, twisted out, but when they twisted in, they could move it and they could do it. And when I used to have all these tools, I used to give a demonstration down at Fort Halifax days with implements, broadsaws, crosscuts, and stuff like that. But because of blood loss, I decided that, of myself and the participants, that parents started, you know, what do you got this guy out here with sharp tool implements for?
You have a question?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
Ray, on that last picture that you have, can you imagine?
Yep, oh, for sure.
That's Charles Eaton from Oakland.
That is?
Yep.
Okay, maybe,
He was Wyman's partner.
okay, I got the wrong picture of it. Yeah. That's good, that's a good catch. Yeah, it was, Eaton and Wyman, right, you're absolutely right. Yeah, 100% right, yeah. Good catch. And that's Wyman filling up. So when they did Wyman, of course, when you did a lake, you all calculated the height of what the new lake was going to be. So what they would do is they would go around the perimeter and they would log everything around the perimeter only so deep. So they didn't have the time to log interior, so they logged the shoreline. So when you look at some of the older pictures, you'll see sometime in the middle of the lake, I don't think it is now, but the wood, the actual timbers were still there, which, you know, which, and then there's Eaton, yeah. Remember, I'm just subbing, you know, and this is like now, when I first started, it was Scott Paper Company, and then it became Sappy Fine Paper Company, and then Plum Creek owned the woodlands, and now Weyerhaeuser owns the woodlands up there and stuff. And so this is the land that they own. Of course, you can see Moosehead Lake up here, and these are all warehousing owns and stuff. And we remember the Plum Creek land deal. Remember that? That was stuff, and you know, it's just and that's a logging camp. One of the things, I'm glad I never had to work in a logging camp but I don't know what year that is. I don't know. I would say, you know, it's hard to say. There's some of the some of the loggers and stuff. One of the things. I don't. Where's Jessica? Hey, did you have the PV? The PV?
What, with the double works in the middle?
No.
I don't have a regular PV.
Okay. I have one, but I was gonna. That's okay. One of the things that they would peel the logs, and they were 5 foot. So, and then these are just some of the stuff. It's funny when I was reading about some stuff during the spring, the black flies. Of course, we all know black flies. To keep away from the flies, men would put iodine and baby oil on their bodies. So, and then the river drivers had to tie their pants and legs so bloodsuckers could not get in. So I remember once I worked in the summer for a school for challenging kids, and we used to bring them on these camping hikes. So we went to Bigelow one time, and this particular child, love him to death, he had a cleaning fetish. So we always had to go by the stream, and we had to clean him up a lot. And so I said just sit in the stream, you know what I mean? And so he did, and it was fine. And then he got up, and then he was covered with leeches. Okay, it was like, oh my God, it was like, yeah, it's like, okay, all right, well, maybe we better get back to camp. And then that was like a wood log and stuff. I don't know, Hall. I'm not sure. And then when I lived on, Kathy and we lived on Benton Avenue up by the bark piles I was 13, I think, when we moved. And so 13 to when I went to college. And so we used to go back there, and we used to, my buddy up the road, Dana Ashe, we used to go sleep on top of the garage, and then at night we would go down to the logging, to the river. And they had a log sorter, I forgot what they called it, but we wouldn't be nice people down there, okay? We shouldn't have been there. So, but we played on there were these big logs. They were like 12 by 12, maybe even 18 by 18 logs that they used to chain together to guide the logs in certain areas where they could sort them down to different places. They took the ones in Winslow and they put them up on the wood pile, and then the others went down the Gardner. So this ship sort of like was out there. We used to just go, and we would, there were trestles that were there from the 1900s, and we would shimmy these logs out to the middle of the river, and then we would go on the trestles, and then it was not what I would call a safe adventure, but and this is, of course, a local. The Lombard hauler, steam hauler, was patented, and we all know Alvin Lombard. He in Waterville, and he built 83 of them between 1901 and 19. And this is, if you read about him, there's a lot of different stories about him and how he came. And this is his mechanism was a precursor to the Army tanks. So that rotary type of gear that he made for the tracks. And you could see on a Lombard, you could see the guy sitting in front. You had to steer it down to, when they came with these logs and stuff. So, and if it started sliding, then this guy would have to just jump out into the snow. You have one right here, actually, right, Jess? You have one there. This guy, Breton, I forgot his name from...
Rick.
Yeah, Rick. And he brings, he was in a couple parades that we asked him to be into, and a couple years ago at Fort Halifax State. He brought his working lumbar hauler down there and was going around the parking lot. It was really great to see. And, he's restored a lot of things. Great guy and just very nice. And then again, this is a lumbar hauler. And then, just to get into the Native Americans just for a few minutes, then this is the red paint people 5,000 years ago. And they were named for red ochre lining their graves. And they were one of the things, red paint people near Mount Kenny Hotel, but the graves were destroyed years ago with tennis courts. And that was, probably at one of the Kenny houses rebuilding. Actually in Winslow, we have red paint graves along the Sebascook River. So on both sides of the river, actually, they've identified quite a few grave sites, and they're protected.
Are they marked?
No. That's one of the things that they thought, that if they were marked, then they would be reopened and people would go and start digging around. And so they don't mark them, but you can go on the historic website of the state of Maine, and there's approximately where they are and where their historic sites are. So you can see where they are, but they're not like...
Right.
Yeah.
What damage might have occurred during the January, December floods?
Yeah. Those never reached the graves, but I can tell you a story that, when the flood happened, it's controversial, but landslides along the Kennebec are pretty common. So we had a landslide at one of the historic, at Fort Hill Cemetery. So we had a slide on the back side of Fort Hill. That's the second one in the last 12 years. So what we did was, we had been restoring the cemetery for the last 2 years. So there were 10 graves that were in jeopardy when the last slide happened. So we got together and said, we got to do something. We moved the headstones right off, but we didn't know what the remains are. And so it's our duty, at least we thought, and Ella and some of us really thought that we needed to look for remains. So we got our cemetery guy that we had just approved, and we got the funeral home involved, and we identified 10 graves that we thought were in jeopardy. So these graves were 150 to 200 years old for Fort Hill Cemetery. Not Native Americans, but settlers, around that time. So we didn't think we'd find anything, and then, so what you do is you pick a spot and you start digging down. And then what you find first is the outline of a grave. So it's sand, and then you see a reddish, brownish, dark brown, and it's a perfect figure, of the coffin. And the reason why you don't see red at the beginning of the top of the coffin is because they're wood coffins, they collapsed onto the bodies. So that was open, so the top of the coffin would, that's what we figure, collapsed, and then you see the outline first. And so what you do is, at the time, is you start with the biggest bone in the body. So you look at the thing, you know that this is the feet, so you go for a femur bone. So you try to find the femur bone, and 10 out of 10, the bodies were intact. And so there's a whole procedure about when you find bones in a grave, that you have, the funeral director has this white table with a white thing on it, board on it, and it has a outline of a grave. So you take the bones out of the grave, and you rearrange them the best you can on this white table. And then, you just do that time and time and time again till you feel you have the remains of the body. And then you put them in a temporary coffin, and then we had looked for alternative sites in the same cemetery as close as possible that we could bury those remains and keep them good. So, where they wanted to be, and we could put their headstones back up. So of the 10 graves, they were there. It was a different experience. I will say that some of the ladies, the skulls when they came out, had comb, you know, like wooden combs in them. They had some, not a lot of, no clothing, of course, but just were. It was interesting to say the least. And one of the things that the funeral director and our cemetery people, we didn't have anybody there that wasn't involved in the process. Respectful as you can for the remains of people that were there. I can't emphasize enough that they wanted to respect the remains and what they did to respect and honor the remains of those people. So that's enough. And there were tribes in the town. Consisted of, you could see, this is central Maine from Moosehead, and you could see a lot of the tribe things. And they said there were 13,000 Abenakis at the time of white intervention, and I think there was probably more, 35,000, 40,000, something like that. But like I said, it's all, and is a person from the land where the sun rises and stuff. And these are Abenakis in Maine, of course. And of course, in this area was like, this was Indian City, really, here at the Sebascook and the Kennebec River, where they had Indian villages at different places and all that. So we were called in this area the Taconets. And then there was the Norridgewock and the Cushnicks and Augusta, the Sagadahocs a little farther down south. And then, of course, between 1675 and 1760, they were, and depends on who you talk to, at least so many Indian wars that came in. And you could see, and a lot of them hovered right around, as, you know, the King Philip's War was down in Massachusetts. King William's, it started going north and north and north. And as Pemaquid started to be, and some of these other areas started to have settlers come in, as later years, they involved all the years. And the last French and Indian War was 1755 to 1760, and Fort Halifax was built in 1756 right here. So you could tell that, you know, Fort Halifax came in at the end when settlers were really starting to come into the central Maine area. And so by that time, and we'll go into a little bit in the future, but by that time, Norridgewock was a village north of, these got wiped out. The Indians in central Maine got wiped out, but in Norridgewock, the tribe still stayed. That was the southernmost tribe with the French influence was Norridgewock Indians. So, and you can see King William's War, which is at the beginning, where Boston, and this is the French coming down, and this is the English trying to, and that's and every one of the Native Americans had a side that they chose. One of the things about what I